Hello and welcome to the preview on the Fulhamish YouTube channel. My name's Elizabeth Barnard, and for one final time this season, I'll be your host today. Today, we're looking forward to our last game of the season against Manchester City on Sunday. Look, it's kind of after the Lord's Mayor show when it comes to Europe this season, but it would be lovely to end the season on a high. And for this one, I am delighted to be joined by David from the Blue Moon podcast. David, how are you doing?
I am not too bad, thank you. How are things?
Yeah, really good, thank you. Really excited for this last game of the season, actually. Feeling that there might be some magic, but we will come on to that. We will come on to that. Firstly, it would be great to have a look at City season so far, and how it's felt to be a City fan. It must be an odd one as a fan of a club with so much success over recent years. For no other club would a season like this be a disappointment, but with no major trophies and still battling in that top 5 race for Europe, it must have felt like a little bit of a disappointment, maybe, comparison to the last couple of years. Tell me, how has it felt, really, to be a City fan?
Well, it's seasons are in the context of what you hope to achieve in them, aren't they? And that's the thing.
Mm.
Like going into this one, I think City hoped to achieve again what they'd been achieving in the years before it. So they were hoping to be in a title race. I always find it difficult to say whether a season is a disappointment or not, because you have to kind of wear the privilege and know like what a privilege it is to be in a title race year after year. So to not be in one. And to call that like a disappointment, or like you see some people talk about how it's like it's one of the worst things in the world. I was like, well, it isn't. Like there's lots of other teams that have it a lot harder. So like yeah, it's not been entertaining at times, and the winter period especially was pretty difficult going through. I mean, they had a run where they won like one game in like 2 months, and it was like that sort of spell is difficult for fans of any team to watch, but you have to check yourself and you have to be aware of what other teams are going through. Like if you're talking about teams that haven't had a fun season, then like you can't have a serious conversation as a City fan with a Southampton fan, for instance, because they obviously haven't had a fun season. So, like, there is that element to it as well. But at the same time, Southampton's squad wasn't built with the resources that City's squad was built with, and it wasn't built with the aims and objectives of achieving what City have achieved over the last few years. So, there is a delicate balance to be struck there. It has been a disappointing and an underwhelming season. But it's been all right. You know, there's been moments to cheer, and there've been a bit few and far between at times, and you kind of have to laugh your way through, you know, conspiring to win a Manchester derby that both teams deserve to lose. The fact that you get to a second FA Cup final is fantastic, but then it's two in a row where you've not won it. It's like there's not like there's teams out there that would kill to be in an FA Cup final, and I get that. And you kind of have to be aware of that when talking about whether this has been a disappointing season or not. It has, because ultimately City aim to be in the title picture and they're not. But I'm always wary of at the start of every season judging the season by its silverware. And certainly in the last few weeks, there are signs that it's a weird thing to say, but I think Guardiola will be quite happy with how he solved the problems of this season, because there's been a lot of problems, and you get to the back end of it, and now they need a point at Craven Cottage to qualify for the Champions League next season. Which, I mean, it wasn't the aim at the start of the season, but it certainly became. It looked for a spell like they might not do that. So, you know, fair play. They've had to go out and solve the problems of this season, and they've done it by and large.
Absolutely. So you talk about needing a point in this game at Craven Cottage. I was feeling, maybe naively, slightly hopeful that City wouldn't be up for this game after the FA Cup defeat, and also after Kevin De Bruyne's emotional goodbye at the Etihad. Am I being delusional? Are City going to be well up for this game? Are they going to be coming and wanting to play out their skins to prove that they deserve to be in the competition next season?
So I think we've seen a different City in recent weeks. They're still making mistakes. They're still. I mean, the game against Bournemouth, for instance, I thought City played pretty well.
Mhm.
But they were susceptible to just moments of doing something stupid. I mean, Bournemouth scored by City making a really loose pass across the back, and they got in that way. Kovacic was sent off because they did exactly the same 20 minutes earlier. So there's still moments where City will look in control and look everything like everything is like calm and like they're doing the normal possession thing, and then somebody will just go on, have the ball and just give it away. It's like it's really weird this season. So they're still susceptible to that, but since I'd say since they beat Bournemouth in the FA Cup, although it took a couple of games after that, they had a 2-0 win over Leicester, and then they drew the Manchester Derby at Old Trafford, which was a pretty poor game. Um, but performances have kind of steadily increased and got better throughout that time. To the point where actually I thought they played pretty well in the FA Cup final, and like 9 times out of 10, that sort of performance would be enough to get over the line and get the job done. As it happened, Crystal Palace were phenomenal, and they got blocks on everything and defended really well, and City couldn't get through. I've got no complaints over the scoreline in terms of performances, but I've also got no complaints really with City's performance either.
Mhm.
And we're kind of seeing that kind of come to build towards the end of the season. I'm interested to see how it looks for next season. I don't think City will come to this one and think, okay, we only need a point. Let's only play for a point. It's kind of there as a nice little safety net for them. And I think that there's more likely what will happen is City will be looking at this as an opportunity to build on what they've built, what they've put in place over the course of the kind of last 6-8 weeks or so, and set them up in good stead for the Club World Cup and then on for next season. And maybe there's one or two players who are playing for I don't want to say positions, but pride for next season,
Mhm.
because there's not necessarily question marks over who's going to be staying and leaving. We know De Bruyne is going. We don't really know about anybody else. But I don't think kind of one performance in one game will decide whether they get to stay or not for next season. But a good performance will certainly help, if that makes sense. So I think I don't think City are going to come and just kind of play out a game for the point that they need. I think they're going to come and try and win the game and kind of prove that, listen, this City team's not quite finished just yet, because this end to the season has kind of been that, and I think it's just a kind of a continuation of that.
Absolutely. I feel like obviously I'm not a City fan, but I've seen a lot of Pep Guardiola City over the years. And it always feels like the season is finished in a strong way, which can't be said for Marco Silva's Fulham at all, unfortunately. Despite our good result last weekend, there's always the sort of spring slump. Um, so even when the wobble in the winter was happening, I thought maybe City would turn it around towards the beginning of that period and even go on to win the title. Obviously, it didn't end up materialising. But as you mentioned, a very impressive run of form, bar that FA Cup final and that slightly quirky 0-0 draw with Southampton in the last few weeks. So definitely a team for Fulham to fear on Sunday. So talk to me then about those threats. Where are City going to be able to hurt Fulham on Sunday? And who are the players with a point to prove that you expect to be playing out their skin?
So the answer to this is, unfortunately, don't know, because City's threats in the last few weeks have been they've really changed. It really depends on how Guardiola approaches this one. He's had two kind of systems where he's had threat from wide coming from wingers, whether that's been picking Savino and Doku and getting them to run at the fullbacks. It's not exactly had. It's not bore a great deal of fruit, that, but it has been a way that City have been trying to get in behind. And I mean, a player like Jeremy Doku he gets in and he gets in behind and beats his fullback time and time again. It doesn't create an awful lot despite doing that, so that's like there is a little bit of a disconnect there. But the other method has been get all of the players that have played well for City over the last 5, 6, 7 years, and I'm talking kind of De Bruyne and Gundogan and Kovacic more recently, and Bernardo, and get them all in the middle of the pitch, and then have the width coming from the fullbacks, and having Nico O'Reilly and or Guardiola in the last couple of games, and Matthias Nunes bombing on down the wings. Now, there is an interesting element to this in that the two players that gave the ball away for the two biggest errors against Bournemouth were Josko Gvardiol when he rolled it
Mm.
back, and Kovacic ended up taking the red card, and Matthias Nunes, who basically put a goal on the plate for Fulham, for Bournemouth. And so there is the element of Guardiola might look at that and go, right, okay, well, you two, out you come. We're gonna do something else with the defenders, and you could put Kanji at left back, you could put O'Reilly back in at left back, and then the width is going to have to come from the wingers a bit further up. So it all depends on the approach. It also depends on Fulham's approach, because if Fulham decide to sit in and not really have any ambitions to come out apart from when there is an opportunity to counter. I'm not knocking that as an approach, by the way. It's worked for plenty of teams this season. City really don't have that much of an answer to move players out of the way. City have been quite good in recent weeks when teams have left a little bit of space, and I'm talking like Crystal Palace in the game at the Etihad, talking Bournemouth earlier this week, that sort of thing. When it's been a low block and a slog to get through, they've needed a moment of individual inspiration, and by and large, actually, they've got it in recent weeks. But it just kind of toss a coin about who it comes from, because you think of more recently the Wolves game at the Etihad. That was Kevin De Bruyne just popping up with a goal out of nowhere. Matthias Nunes got one against Villa, and then like the Everton game at Goodison looked like it was going to rumble onto a 0-0 draw until Nico O'Reilly scored. So there's like individual moments have been what City have been living on in recent weeks. And if Fulham are strong defensively, then City might need something like that again. And who's going to provide it? I don't know. The only thing is that I'm a little bit sad that Kovacic isn't going to be available with being suspended after his red card, because City have looked a lot more stable when he's been in the team. And it's about stability. It's not really about who's going to do what. It's about making sure that the team is set up and stable. And as much as if Fulham are trying to low block and trying not to give up any space, they will be looking for opportunities to counter. And when City are stable, the number of counter attacks that the other team get are really quite minimal. So it's a double-edged sword. City will want the other team, if they're in a low block, they'll want them to stay there and not get out. But at the same time, that makes it really difficult to break them down. And certainly for this season's City, it gets really difficult to break them down. So that's a long way of saying it could come from any of them. Really could come from any of them.
I do think the point you have about sort of long range bangers is very relevant towards Fulham, because Fulham have conceded, I think it's the most goals in the Premier League from outside the box this season. And there are so many teams, like every single time Liverpool come to play Fulham, McAllister scores a goal from outside of the box. Like it just feels crazy how much it happens. And it's not even
I don't really think City have got that many players that can do it though either.
But,
like De Bruyne might do it, but he's not really been that De Bruyne this season. Marmoush might do it, but he's not scored away from the Etihad this season. So like, I don't know.
I did obviously watch the Marmoush goal on was it Monday night, and that was incredible. My other thing with that is like the reverse fixture, thinking about that 3-2 game at the Etihad, which was kind of crazy, but those were 3 long range banging strikes. I think a couple of them were from Kovacic, at least one was, so that does make me feel a little bit more relieved that he's not going to be playing for this game. Before we go, I would love to ask you just quickly for a couple of words on Kevin De Bruyne. Fulham might be losing our equally good, questionably, titanic midfielder this summer, Tom Kearney, who's been at the club for a decade and means everything to the fan base. And we're still not sure, but it will be an emotional game on Sunday nonetheless. But talk to me about what Kevin De Bruyne has meant to City fans over the past decade.
It's really, I mean, you've all seen it. Everybody knows what he can do. There's no point in me talking about his football ability, because like that, it's so obvious what he's achieved at City. I think the sad thing is, and the thing that's really got me with this one, because City have seen legends leave recently, kind of like year on year for a few years. They had go all the way back to 2017. They had Zabaleta, and they had the farewell for Zabaleta at the end of Pep's first season. The year after that, it's Yaya Toure doing the same. The year after that, it's Company going. The year after that, it's David Silva. The year after that, it was Sergio Aguero. These things have happened again and again and again. But Kevin De Bruyne is kind of the second generation of kind of legendary City player. Those players that I've just talked about were all in the first title winning team. They were the first team that that kind of were successful in the Premier League era. They obviously go back to the 60s and City have got a successful team there, but it's the first of that I've been around to see, and it's the first that a lot of fans have been around to see. And they all moved on, and City rebuilt and kind of moved on from there. And Kevin De Bruyne was a big part of that. And now this one feels like the end of an era, because this is the second era of City coming to a close. And this season hasn't been good, and this season has had its problems. And like you look at the way that De Bruyne has shaped this City team, and there's the images you have of him are all kind of pulling his socks up, getting his hands dirty, and getting really into the problems of the game, and going, all right, well, I'll fix this then, and like just running a game like that. And like there's, in terms of his abilities and what he could do, I've never seen anyone like. You might be able to find a player, a midfielder who has better long range shooting, or you might find a player who has better tackling or better work rate or something like that. But De Bruyne has them all to the best level. There's nobody I've ever seen that has been able to do everything he can do to the level he can do it. There might be players who can do one of those things better than him, but all the other things that he can do, they're just nowhere near. De Bruyne is so consistent across all of his abilities that he's just been so valuable to City over this time. And like he's just an icon of this era of Manchester City, and it's not a stretch to say that he's the club's best ever player, and it's not a stretch to say, I think personally, that it's not a stretch to say that he's the Premier League's best ever player. Obviously, you're talking about different skill sets in different positions, but again, like De Bruyne has been there and he's done it all, and he's carried City along the way. So it was a really tough decision, I think, from the club to say, look, this is time. If hand on heart, it's probably the right decision at the right time. It's a hard one to call, but he hasn't been. He's really suffered with injuries, and I think the injury in 2023 in the Champions League final, that was the culmination of basically playing with a hamstring problem for 2 months. And I think it's probably not a stretch to say that the end of his career is now not going to be the same because he got City over the line in that Champions League. And I think you've got to be forever grateful for what he achieved with City, not even in just that season, but especially in that season. Purely because like he did all of that while carrying a problem. The problem then got so much worse and exacerbated in that final, and he's never been the same since. And that you kind of have to go, well, like he might not see it as a sacrifice. He might just see it as having done his job. But it feels very much like he sacrificed the end of his career to get City to incredible highs in 2023. And that's just the player that he is. He's quite unassuming. He didn't want any of the adulation or fanfare on Tuesday night. I'm fairly sure. I'm fairly sure he was a little bit embarrassed by the attention, but he went along with it, and you kind of have to as the player who is going to get a statue and he's going to be kind of dubbed as the club's best ever. You do kind of have to kind of be a little bit humble to it all and let people have their moment, because it was an emotional night, and he'll be forever missed. And I think it's not a stretch to say it might genuinely never be the same at City again. It might never reach the highs that he and the team around him got to. And you have to savour those moments because they don't come along that often. So it's really sad to see him go. I do think it's the right time, but that doesn't make it any easier.
100%. And I feel like every single mid-table Premier League fan is going, what if he comes to Craven Cottage on Sunday and never wants to leave and wants to sign for Fulham? I can have my pie in the sky thinking. I don't think it'll happen. I think it's incredibly unlikely it happens, but I'll allow myself to dream just a little bit on that one. Thank you so much for joining me today, David. Before we go, would it be all right to get a score prediction from you for this game?
Yeah, so this is the final day of the season. Mad stuff happens. Fulham have In theory, nothing to play for. Obviously, you got you can finish a bit higher in the table, but that's never the driving factor that people think it is. I've been there with City. I've seen City go into final days and have nothing to play for, and they've been absolutely battered. I've seen City go into final days with nothing to play for and absolutely batter somebody. And there's times where you just don't know what you're going to get. I think from City's point of view, they'll be a little bit nervy that they've just got to get the job done, get it over the line. I can see it being a bit of a nervy game. I'm going to say 2-1 to City, but I don't think it. This is literally the one game week of the season where any scoreline does not surprise you. So I'm fairly sure that I could be quite easily wrong about that.
Final game of the season could be anything. So I'm going to say pretty out there, but I think City are going to win this one 5-3. But I think there are going to. There are going to be goals, David.
Why not?
I think Fulham are going to be open. I think City are going to capitalise on that, and I think we're going to be able to capitalise on a few City mistakes. And I, for one, would love to see that, a little bit of entertainment in the sunshine by the Thames. Thank you so much for joining me, David. Where can people find you?
Just search Blue Moon Podcast, and you'll find the podcast there. We're all over Spotify, Apple, all the usual places.
Perfect. And thank you for watching the preview, and thank you for all your support on the preview this season. We'll be back very soon with a quick take after the City game, and I'll be back next season with the preview. Looking forward to a whole fresh bunch of fixtures. You Whites.